is the April 11th, 2024 Building Committee meeting for the Concord School District and the Concord School Board with regards to the construction of the middle school. Ms. Walsh unfortunately had some mechanical issues, so I will be chairing this, although not quite expecting to, so please bear with me if I take a few minutes to get organized and do some things. Before we move on, I think probably the easiest way to do it is the way we did last meeting, and that is to just let everyone introduce yourselves. Please speak into the microphone, and we'll just go around. And once again, I'm Jim Richards. I am on the Capital Facilities Committee of the school board. So go ahead, Linda.
I'm Linda O'Rourke. I'm an 8th grade language arts teacher at Runlet.
I'm Rick Brewster. I'm just a local citizen on the building committee.
Terry Wolf, Director of Communications for the district.
Lisa Boudwin, Concord resident.
Holly Miller, I'm an architect with HMFH, and I'm the design leader for the project.
Tina Stanislawski from HMFH and the principal in charge.
Matt Cashman, I'm the Director of Facilities and Planning and will serve as the OPM for the project.
Jay Burgess, I'm with the City of Concord, Public Properties, Security Division.
Kate Vaughn, I'm a parent and member of the building committee.
Kathleen Murphy, superintendent.
I'm Nicole Fox. I am a civil transportation engineer and a parent of 2 students at Runlet.
Barb Higgins, school board member.
All right. Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate your commitment to doing this. We have 2 items on the agenda this evening. The first is the construction management update by Mr. Cashman. The second being a reviewed update of the schematic building by our folks from HMFH. So without any further delay, Mr. Cashman, do you want to
Sure.
take over and make your presentation?
And just to let everyone know ahead of time, I've got to go, as soon as this update is up, then I'll go up to the sustainability meeting that's going to be up at the high school. So we wanted to do a overview timeline. So back on January 30th, we sent out the RFP for construction management services. On March 8th, we held in this room a mandatory pre-bid proposal meeting, offering the opportunity for the construction firms to come in and ask any questions, and we did an overview. On March 29th, the proposals were due, and we received 3 proposals from 3 separate companies, Harvey Construction, Consigli Construction, and PC Construction out of Vermont. April 4th, we established a small subset selection committee out of the building committee. Tonight, April 11th, we have our building committee meeting. On May 1st, from 9 until 1 p.m., we're going to have interviews back to back to back with the 3 construction firms. And at that time, we'll hear their presentation, we'll be able to ask questions, and we'll talk about how we're going to grade out the firms. Then on May 2nd, the following day, we do have our next building committee meeting. And it's what we want to do is be able to have the subgroup make the recommendation to the committee, and then on the Monday, the following, is to have the committee bring forward a recommendation to the board, and then the board would decide on the firm, and then we would get into a contract.
Mr. Cashman, just for the benefit of everyone who's watching as well, who was on the CM selection subgroup?
I'll show you right here.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm
so-
John. I should have been reading ahead.
Superintendent Murphy, myself, Business Administrator Jack Dunn, Bob Cotton, who is the chair of the Capital Facilities Committee, Nicole Fox, Dana Adams, who is not here tonight, but he owns his own construction firm, Rick Brewster, who also has, what did you say, Rick, 30-plus years?
50.
50 years? That's a lot. And Jay Burgess from the city, who also has a lot of construction experience.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, that's the 2 through 5 is just a reiteration of what I reviewed with you, but that is our process. We will have on, like I said, on that Wednesday, we'll have each of the firms come in and present. We'll be able to ask questions, get to know them in that interview, and then we'll deliberate afterwards. And again, we'll follow the process that we just talked about. The committee would make a recommendation at the school board meeting for the firm they recommend.
Okay. Am I jumping ahead again, or can I?
You're good.
Jump right in.
As soon as you're done, I'm gonna go.
The question that has been posed to us, and I'll just throw it out here now, is does the committee member, and especially the subcommittee members from this building committee, all agree that going with a construction manager is probably the most efficient and the most effective way to move forward? Does anybody have any input that I just wanted to get your public statements?
I think it's probably a pretty good idea. I mean, it's either that or a CM agreement, which would be a guaranteed maximum agreement type thing. I'm sorry. So, yeah, it's either a guaranteed maximum price or a CM agreement, especially where plans are incomplete, so you're not at a place where you can just put it out on the street to bid it amongst whoever general contractors wish to bid, because it's a process.
Okay.
And doing it as a CM, they can participate in the process and maybe help come up with ideas to be more economical about how to build things, which is my goal for being here, was to kind of guide that a little bit, to, use my experience and knowledge about it may be more cost effective to try this. And as a CM, you can do that because it's not cast in stone yet. We're still developing the project.
Okay. Thank you. Nicole, do you have anything you want to add?
I will say that Mr. Brewster has substantially more construction experience than I do, and I have no objections, and I will defer to his expertise.
Perfect. Mr. Burgess, do you have anything to add?
I think the construction management process is sound in this case, particularly because it's all open book. All of the details of the construction will be available to everybody, so there won't be any question about what things cost, how we move forward. It's all very open and available for people to see.
Okay. Thank you all. I know I put you on the spot, but I appreciate it. Does anyone else have anything they want to add or contribute to that particular discussion? Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cashman? All right. You have a pretty aggressive timeline, but I appreciate that. So,
We do.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman.
Sure.
You can go to your sustainability meeting, so
Okay.
much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. Unless someone has something more on that topic, let's move on to a review of the updated schematic and building plan, HMFH. Tina, Holly, you have,
All set? Okay.
you set? Good.
So last time we met with this group, we were talking about different parties, organizations for the building, and the Main Street organization was chosen. And so since we had that meeting, we have had multiple meetings with the principal, with Superintendent Murphy, with John Fabrizio, the educators, and also with the programming group. So we have continued to develop the floor plans and the site plan with the information from all of those folks. And we feel good that we have a very solid program in place that's supported by the school. We've collected everything that they need and, would like to have in this new school. So we're gonna present those to you tonight, and then we can walk through the process of how we move from here to get to the estimate that everybody's very interested in. So just to give you an update on the site plan, remember that we are locating the new building off of North Curtisville up here into, the parcel. Parent drop-off will be off of Portsmouth Street, and they will come up, drop off. This white square is a plaza.
feedback. Let's see.
Buses will come off of South Curtisville, so they'll be separate, and they'll drop off students at the same plaza. So everybody's going to come into the front door together here. Keeping the two types of, cars and buses separate on the site was something that we heard from VHB and very important for safety. We are showing right now fields behind the school. We're showing a new track with a practice field in the center, another game field next to that, and then a baseball and softball field. We're also showing a connection, through the woods that are here now to the elementary school, because there is a hope that the schools will do things together and that they will enjoy being on the same site together. So it's private, you can't really see the new school from there, but you can take this nice wooded path, nature trail from one school to the other. The fields that are behind broken ground are existing and they're not going to be touched in this project. The walking track that's here, it's like a dirt path, that's still in place. So none of that has changed. All of the elementary school playground and everything is all the same. Anything I missed on that? No.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I didn't know if you wanted us to ask at the end.
Yeah,
but okay.
no, you should interrupt me and ask questions as we go.
Do softball and baseball games occur at the same time ever? Because I see an overlap.
I think the foundational question is.
We're going to make sure they don't.
Okay,
You
that's a
know?
scheduling thing, but not
Yep. Yep.
something we can, that's something we can control?
Yep. Yep.
My next question is, I can see that path. The trails are accessible still for the two elementary schools, I
Right.
assume.
They are. So we are showing the trails
Mhm.
here. There's one that comes off of the circle now and connects. We're not touching that. And then you will be able to park here after hours and access the trails from that parking lot. So any trail that we're, moving in some way or another, we're reconfiguring nicely so that you can still access all the trails that are out there.
Okay, and clarifying one other item, when you said this was off of North Curtisville, it's not off of North Curtisville, they are separate
Exactly.
and you cannot get to the site from North Curtisville, correct?
Yes, thank you
Okay.
for that clarification. I just meant to point out that it's north of that.
So I have a question too, if you're.
Sure, no, go right ahead.
I noticed that all of the fields are located on the 59-acre parcel, and there's none that are being shown in the wooded area off of Portsmouth Street. There was a lot of discussion in the fall about only clearing 8 acres of that 59-acre parcel, and that looks to be substantially more. Is there the ability to, what was the process that was?
Sure. Yes, we did actually look at putting fields here off of Portsmouth. The discussions that we had with the school was that they felt that it was a bit of a walk for the students to come down and use those for PE classes. And so they preferred having them off the back of the school. The locker rooms are sort of here in the school and the gym is in this location. So it'll be this direct access from the school. Our thought was that in this estimate, we will be able to pull out what it costs to build an individual field. And then we can continue talking about where they're located. So if you wanted to say, take this field and put it down here, it's gonna be about the same cost. So we can continue the conversation.
Okay.
And I don't know if the district wants to add into that.
No, I just think a key component with the fields close to the school is recess, right? So our kids have recess daily. We want kids outside getting exercise, during lunch. So you need fields close to the school, so it's, easier for supervision, et cetera.
That makes sense, but I just want to point out that was a really contentious issue with the community, and there's a lot of hard feelings, so I think that will be an issue that will come up again.
Right, the other thing, just to add to that, was the parking. So the way we divided up the parking was so that after school, parents could park here to come and see the games. And when we put the fields down here, parking was a little bit more challenging, and we were concerned that they might park on Portsmouth. That had come up. But again, I think we can we can continue the conversation once we know how much these cost. And it may be, you know, when we look at the estimates, that we can only afford 2 fields. So we're gonna do it in a way that we'll have a menu of costs, and we can add and subtract things as we feel is necessary to get to the budget that we want.
So I don't know much about the athletic stuff here, but so there's a track there. Is it just like a recreational jogging track for a PE class, or is it a 400-meter track that would have long jump, triple jump, high jump, all the requisite things that track meets could be held there?
Yes, right now we're carrying the full track.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
My understanding is currently the middle school doesn't have baseball and softball. Is this a programming change that would come?
Yeah, this is something I think a reflection on what the community would like, and talking with parents, and particularly me individually with students. We have a lot of students who are participating in softball and baseball in the community, but they do like private type leagues, and it'd be great to have, you know, a public school opportunity for both of those sports for our kids. And again, it's an opportunity for everybody in the school. And I do want to add just about the fields. I understand that in terms of the space, but this is a reflection of exactly what our students need in terms of athletic spaces with these fields. And, you know, in consulting with our athletic directors, we have a lot of great opportunities for our kids after school. And I think some people would argue that this is actually a little bit less field space than we might need for our programs. So when we talk about maybe eliminating a field, I think we just have to be very thoughtful of that, because again, this is a reflection of what the minimum of what we would need to service our students after school in our programs.
Well, we have a city that's short on fields all the time, so this is potential revenue. You know, a track stadium, there's track meets bring in, you know, that's a revenue producer there, and just other groups using the fields. So
I was just actually, I whispered to Superintendent Murphy, the reason why I was late is a parent, actually, we couldn't find a student. So I was actually driving between the middle school and Memorial Field to make sure we could find the student, and I actually ended up finding the child. But just an example, a real life example of why you want your fields
On your
like
school,
on
yeah.
site, so I can walk out and find that. But that, just a real life example that just happened with my track program over at Memorial Field. So
I will add, and I think probably Barb, at least you remember, I don't know other people who were involved in the visioning process. One of the very major results of that 3-day process was an expression by the parents and the community members that they wanted more field space, some much more than this, but that was a general thing. So. Go ahead, please.
You must have been reading my mind. I appreciate your patience with my questions. Can you speak a little bit about the visioning process? I have several questions. Do other middle schools have track and field teams so that there'll be, my children haven't been in middle school for a long time, so
Ms. Higgins, do you want to respond to
middle
that?
school track is huge in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Huge. Where Runlet is at a huge deficit facility-wise. Even a little teeny town like Bow. Now, granted, when they built their new high school, there was already an existing track at Bow Memorial, but there's 2 tracks in that teeny little community, because lots of middle schools actually have tracks on their facilities. But that the middle school track program probably has more kids than the high school track program.
Just to speak to that, I don't know about this year, but in previous years, there were so many students that participated in the track program that not all students could attend every meet, and they had to take turns because there were that many students who participated.
Right.
Nice.
Great, and just to follow up, if I could, the visioning process that happened, what did that look like? How was that actually representative of parents and other stakeholders in the community? Because, you know, an official track field is a lot of money. So I'm not disputing that it might be really fabulous for middle schoolers, and, you know, middle schoolers want lots of things that they can't have. So I'm just a little curious about how much stakeholder representation went into the visioning process.
Go ahead.
If we're speaking specifically to the track aspect of this, the last time Concord could host a state meet for high school track, a Division I meet or a Class L meet, was 2009. I was the meet director. We don't have a facility in Concord that can hold a meet. Who knows what's going to happen with Memorial Field? So if this track were built, we could host the Division I state track and field championships in that facility. So that's high
Right.
school. That's
Sure, but my question is really, because there has been so much concern about the cost.
Oh, right.
I'm wondering about which stakeholders were included
Got it.
in visioning to make sure that the expense is actually reflective of an appropriate cross-section of Concord stakeholders, for whom they're paying for the potential of holding a Division I track meet. Or do enough stakeholders in this community want to pay for that?
And that's a very excellent question. During the visioning process, it involved community members, city leaders, school district officials, some students, a large number of parents, and a large number of community members. It is, we're not going to do all. They wanted 2 turf fields and a pool because this city doesn't have those things. I'm not sure that as a school district we're going to be able to provide all of those things. I don't think so. But there was a couple of things that really came out of that visioning sessions. One was the athletic fields, one was an auditorium, another was outdoor learning spaces that were accessible to students for all types of classes, not just science, but all types of classes that would and have people more out in nature. I think the other thing they wanted to do was, involve the community as much as possible in having access to these items as well. And that whole, I think, 3 sessions is referenced or at least accessed in the middle school pages of our website too. I don't know if anybody else was there that wanted to contribute or want to add to that.
I have a question then.
Yeah.
There's some fields at Runlet now?
There are some fields at Runlet now.
Yeah, we
Mr.
have.
Richard, you probably could list them off
we have
right off
several fields at Runlet Middle School right now. Like we have one out back, off the 100 wing that we primarily use for lacrosse. We have fields that we use for soccer, field hockey. I already mentioned the situation today where our kids were over at Memorial today practicing in terms of the track program. So we do have field space right now at Runlet Middle
So
School.
what will become of those areas? Could those go back to green space and then substitute that for here? So you move that stuff there and you could turn those fields back into green space or leave them as green space and you have a net loss of 0.
I think it's a great question. I think that's a conversation for down the road. But I imagine, again, this is Jay Richard's perspective, is that some of those fields will still continue to be used. For example, like the high school football team, they use one of our fields all fall for football practice. So I would imagine, the high school football team is still going to need a place to use. So maybe one of those fields, even though when we move, you might leave like one of those fields still for something like that.
Take it a step further, what
Yep.
happens to the building site for Runlet once you've vacated it?
Yep.
Does that building get raised and could that become more space?
Yep, I think the initial conversations, and again, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think as a community, we'll have to decide what we're going to do with that, and there's been some good ideas about those things, like possible use for maybe an extension of our vocational programs, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
So there's actually another committee that is addressing the disposition of the existing property. There are numerous options, I believe, according to that. We have if we look back to the most recent situation with that, I believe we sold we're sitting in one, as a matter of fact, used all of the elementary school buildings with the exception of the 2 that we were required to tear down to build both the the Krista McCullough School and the Abbott Downing School, but all of the other elementary schools are still been used. I guess probably everybody who drives up past the Binney Media Building sees one of them every day. So that is going to be something that's beyond this committee's charge to look at, but there are numerous opportunities both, and I know that from my constituents all, or to the great majority of them, preferred us to either reuse or repurpose that building and space, either from the school district's point of view, the city's point of view, or a private entity, so.
Maybe you could give it to the police department. So we don't smell.
That's also beyond our committees.
But that's
Yeah,
another
so.
subject for another day.
Yep.
Want me to keep going?
You can keep going unless someone has another question at this point.
So I think I just want to reinforce that what we're showing you here today is the ideal scenario, and we're going to get this estimated. And the process with the estimate will also price alternates. So with the fields, you'll see how much each field costs. We can scale up or scale down depending on where our costs come in. The building's going to be the same way. Right now, the building has the ideal program in it, and if we need to cut costs, we will have options like a smaller auditorium, a smaller gymnasium, it'll be a sheet-long, menu of items, and they'll have individual costs, and then we'll come back to this group, and we can sort through, what we want to do, what makes the most sense. Okay, so we don't want to get too into cost tonight because we won't have all the information. So what we want to present to you tonight is kind of the ideal scenario. And we're happy to answer questions as to why it's the ideal scenario, because that's important. So this is just a three-dimensional view. We're showing the trees as kind of these masses here because we want you to know that it's still a very heavily wooded site, even though we're developing it. So you see these are the parking areas. You come in on these entrance roads to this really welcoming courtyard that takes you to the main entrance. These are the classroom wings that face the wooded area. They face south, so they have a great ideal orientation. And then all of the shared program is on this side, including the gym, which faces the fields. And you can see we're not connecting at all to North Curtisville. But I will mention that there is a trailhead that comes off that road right now. So we have to keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Holly. She's going to walk you through the floor plans. And these are, developed quite a bit since the last time you saw it. So we'll go through space by space.
So the entrance is on the right side, facing east. So you'll enter the building and come into this main street, which will become this sort of community space and heart of the school. You have an administrative wing to the north of the entry, so that kind of looks out onto the entry plaza. And there's a secure entry vestibule that would be monitored by that administrative wing here. So people would have to come into that secure vestibule and be buzzed in before they come into the school.
Let me zoom in on it a little bit so you can see better.
So this is the administrative wing, and it houses offices and conference rooms and records rooms for administration, including the special education administration. So we have a sort of an office suite. So when you come in, you'll be able to sort of see a lot of the school as soon as you enter. You'll have the auditorium right in front of you. You'll have the gymnasium up on the second floor above you. Parts of this central space are double height, but you'll see the gym up above. And at the end of the main street, you'll see that multi-purpose room, PE room. To the south of the main street are all of the team academic pods, and we have 3 team pods, and the building is 3 floors, so the academic wing is 3 floors. So this will allow you to organize grades either vertically or horizontally, because each grade has 1 team with about 100 students in each pod. All of those team pods have doors that can be closed on the weekend, so you can secure or in the evening, so you can secure kind of the academic wing from the public wing, and the school can be used after hours and on the weekend, and access all of the public spaces to the north, like the gym, multipurpose room, and auditorium. Sort of diving into a team pod. Teams, the middle school team is composed of 4 core academic teachers. So there's science, math, language, arts, and social studies. So each team pod accommodates that. And then there's sort of a team pod area in the center that unites the pod, that unites the team, where teams can come together. And then off of that kind of team project area, there is a small group room and then also a flexible instruction room. All of the lockers for the team and all of the bathrooms for the team are located in this pod. So you can see the lockers kind of surround the project area. So kids will come into this team, and this is where they'll spend most of their day, unless they're leaving for to travel to an exploratory or to go to lunch. Each team does have a 5th classroom that's connected to the pod, and this 5th classroom is accessible either off the main corridor or from within the team pod, and that gives you a lot of flexibility in the future if you had a bubble year and you needed to add another classroom to the team pod. But in some cases, you'll see on the upper floor, some of those classrooms become like the world language classrooms. So all of the support spaces are kind of in the middle here, sort of in this interstitial space between the pods. You can see, there's like Title I tutoring support. We also have things like teacher planning. So each floor has a teacher planning room that will have a small, kitchenette in it where teachers can have their lunch or go to prepare for a class. So it'll have a copier. There's all, and those spaces repeat on every floor, and they're above one another, so it's sort of easy to navigate through the building.
I want to mention the nurse.
Yeah. Oh, and actually the other sort of administrative piece adjacent to the entry is the nurse. So the nurse's suite is on the other side of the main entry. So, if somebody's coming to retrieve a sick kid, you don't have to go all the way through the school. Yep, go ahead.
For clarification purposes, we're looking at 2 pods right now, right?
Right.
Or one, left and right.
Yeah, we can
Correct?
zoom out. There are
Okay.
3 pods per floor. We just wanted to zoom in so we could describe a pod in detail. So there are 3 pods, and there are 3 floors. So that's a total of 9 pods.
3 teams per grade level.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So you could either have your 6th grade on one floor all the way across, or you could do 6th grade as a tower. So on on floors 1, 2, 3, and it can switch up year to year depending on, how you want to run it.
There is a staircase integrated into each pod to facilitate that vertical organization, if that's what you choose.
Holly, would you describe, please, the flexible instructional areas? I know you said that obviously, should there be an enrollment increase, we could use it, but the initial area in all of the teams, those smaller flex rooms, along with some of the larger ones, allow us for student services. So that includes almost all of the programs that we have, from students receiving services through their individual education plans, to our multi-language learners, to our students that have specific needs. Those areas are places youngsters can use should they need smaller instructional areas.
Right.
So I just want to be clear about that. I
Yeah.
think that's a
Yeah.
significant adjustment that we made. We wanted to make sure that all of our students felt that they belonged to a team, belonged to the grade level, whatever that they were part of. So they weren't named with specific programs because we wanted them to be flexible. And again, it may be student services, but it also can be used for all of our students. It could be youngsters that are working on a special project and need an area. So we want to make sure we have enough spaces for our students to provide services, but we also know that we can be flexible enough for all of our students to access those rooms. Is that fair?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, right.
Thank you.
Right, the idea is that, you know, students don't have to travel to get services.
Right.
Services come to students within the pod.
You'll see later on, and when we go upstairs, one of the suggestions, which was an awesome suggestion, we also moved OT and PT upstairs to where the gym is, because that makes sense, right? A lot of that happens in a gym, so we made sure that those facilities where youngsters may have, you know, lots of kids have OT in classrooms, we know that. But there are occasions when OT or PT might be done in a smaller area for whatever reasons, whatever that youngster needs. But it also can be done right in the gymnasium when they're having their physical education classes. And so the OT or the PT teacher can be right there with the physical education teacher. So we wanted to make sure those things were clustered, so it would be easier for the kids to access those programs.
Right.
Before we move on, one of the things that we have discussed, actually just about everybody on this committee has discussed, is, you know, the universal accessibility, and that this is geared so that all of our students are in a classroom whenever they can be, and that they can traverse this school easily, regardless of their physical needs. Now, you know, I'm going to speak just personally because I've had a son who was in an immobilizer that could not bend his knee for many months. There's loads of kids like that. There's other kids who have, you know, accessibility needs. Every one of them needs to be able to get around this building. I'm not seeing a lot of elevators, and that was one of the things that, if you were in the high school, it was brutal to try to get in to use an elevator to get up to your class in the short time allotted between classes. And I don't want to, we don't ever want to have anybody singled out coming in late or anything because of those type of things, and we don't want anybody to feel that a part of the building is not accessible to them. So if you want to address that a little bit, I think
Sure.
We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so this building is really compact. It's not sprawling like the middle school is now or like the high school is now. And we are providing 2 elevators. So there's going to be one here, and they're kind of moving around still, but for the cost estimate, we're going to carry the 2. There's one here right now. Could move closer to the entrance potentially. And then there's another one at this end of the school. Could move a little bit further this way potentially. So we want to find the right spot for those.
Right. And we're always pairing an elevator with a stair. So anybody who's taking the elevator or taking a stair, you know, basically they start and end their journey in the same place, right? So that's very important.
Yeah, that's not true at the high school. They have nothing to do with the stairs.
No, but I see 7 stairs, and I might have missed one. But I only see 2 elevators. Is that enough?
It is enough. We've done larger schools with 2 elevators. I think it's the right fit for this. They are expensive. You know, they're going to be $100,000 a piece potentially, and they do come with maintenance.
Okay.
So I think 2 is the right.
Okay. And are they big enough to easily get in and out of?
Yes,
with
and
a
they'll
wheelchair?
accommodate a stretcher also. So they're fully accessible.
Okay. Thank you.
You can also spend a little bit of extra money and get a faster speed too, so that they would go up and down quicker.
In the
Thanks,
elevator?
Rick.
Yeah. On the elevator.
Pardon me?
The speed of setting the speed. of the
Right,
elevator.
between floors,
Mm-hmm.
it could go quicker. You know, once the doors close, the travel speed could be faster than slower.
Okay.
If
Lisa,
there's
go
a
ahead.
need, so if you need to move more people quicker.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Operating elevator.
Very exciting to see the stair being paired with the elevator, because when we are looking through the lens of the eyes of students, we want students to have a feeling of moving through spaces together. I know that there have been questions about the possibility of ramps and how I know that comes with big dollar signs, but could you tell us what you discussed after receiving the feedback of having ramps? And just want to also say that, you know, if we're going to have a second elevator, it would be fabulous to also have it paired with a stair too, especially if it's going to be primarily students
Yep.
using that second anytime students are gonna be using an elevator.
We did look at a ramp. We looked at a ramp from the first to the second floor. It would be 210 feet long. So we have drawn that, and we did a sketch of that in that kind of Main Street space. We could do that. It would be costly. I think the bigger challenge is that, somebody getting up a 210-foot ramp, would be challenging.
It's difficult.
It would take time. It would be a little bit physically challenging. So it's something that could be done. We think an elevator might be a more effective approach, and if we can keep it paired with a stair.
And we're happy to bring our sketches to the next meeting. We have one more meeting with you before the cost estimate, so it's like the beginning of May, right? So we can show you. We showed the working group from the district, the principal and John Fabricio and Superintendent Murphy, and it is a little excessive in that area, but we're happy to show you all.
It's a few switchbacks.
It's a lot of switchback. Either that or it's kind of wrapping the whole space, so you're gradually making your way up.
It's 1 foot for every inch of height. And every 30 feet, you gotta add 5 more, because there's a landing.
And
So,
we have seen it
it's
done
big.
in schools for little kids, like the pre-K through 2 kind of age group. And, the school was a 2-story school, and, the ramp was a feature in their cafeteria like this. And maybe for the little ones it made sense because it's hard for them to get up and down the stairs. And so everybody was taking the ramp, and it was kind of an activity.
Sure, but in terms of universal design, so that all students have a co-equal experience of moving
Yep, we
through space
understand.
together. So it's not about it being fun for people who use a wheelchair for mobility. It's
Understood.
so we're talking about ideals. So I'm just the ideal schematic is that all learners are moving through space together.
Sure, and we're happy to bring those sketches so you can all see them next week or next month.
If I could speak to that, a fear I would have with the ramp is that because it is such a larger space, visibility of students would be a little bit more difficult for having adults spread out to monitor behavior and just for safety reasons. Whereas stairs, I think, you can stand at one level and look down. It's just the stretch of space, I think, would be a challenge to monitor behaviors.
Okay.
Should we keep going
Thank
on
you.
the
Please.
on the first floor? Okay. So 2 other features of the Main Street is we have located some of the career pathway spaces off the Main Street to really try to feature those kind of hands-on learning experiences, that we want to provide for the students. So the first career pathway, we're looking at right now is this culinary, like kind of a culinary lab that can also be used as one of the health classrooms. There were 2 health classrooms that were included in the program. So we combined one of kind of the career pathway space with this health classroom. So it's a flexible space that can be used one half as a classroom and the other half as a kind of a food tech lab. It's also a space that could be used for after-school events, for team, pasta dinners. We've heard a lot of need for a place to cook in the school from many different parties in the school. The second career pathway, we've got a wood shop kind of at the end of the Main Street. So that is sort of a really kind of prominent location. And then to the north side of the Main Street has the cafeteria. So the kind of, the eating space is in the center, but the kitchen and servery are to the north here. So that would sort of open up into the Main Street. And then, of course, we have the auditorium. The plans are currently showing a 900-seat auditorium. We know that's been a topic of conversation, and we're going to show you some other diagrams a little later in the presentation and talk about, how we're proposing to move forward there. Adjacent to the back of the stage are all the music spaces. So there's a band room, a chorus room, an orchestra room, and then a music theory classroom. at the west end of the main street, we have the multipurpose gym. So that's kind of similar to the space in the existing building that I think is called the NAR. That's also used for performances. So I know the space is used by PE classes and for wrestling meets and so on. So this will be a double height fitness space, PE space. To the north of that, we have a fitness room, and then the OTPT room. And the fitness room and the OTPT room could even have a kind of a wall between them that opens, so those spaces could be used together. We also have some locker rooms on this level that you could access the fields to the north. So there are doors that would take you directly out to the athletic fields to the north. And then we have sort of maintenance and receiving. There's a district food storage space, kind of back of house.
So Holly, can I jump in?
Yep.
So those locker rooms are really more of a team room where teams are either going out for practice, teams are coming to visit and playing games. The changing area for regular PE classes that we have will be, you'll see them upstairs. So I want to kind of differentiate, if I could, between those two. So downstairs is more like teen locker rooms. And then upstairs, you'll see on the second floor. Holly, can you point that out, where the changing areas are? Because our middle school kids, Jay, you could probably expand on that a little bit about changing.
Yeah, a lot of kids, today, like when they're done practice or whatnot, they might change real quick, but they're not showering after practice and stuff like that, and they just want to be kind of like really quick in and out. So you just see, it's an opportune thing for kids that, again, just change real quick, but they don't need the spaces like they typically have in the past.
But those changing areas is if they're changing for PE.
Right. Yep. Yep.
For physical education
Yep.
class, right.
Right, so these changing rooms don't have showers. It's just changing stalls,
Right.
and there are showers downstairs. There are also a couple of single-user toilet rooms with showers in them on the ground floor that could be used by a teacher cycling to work, or could be used, by a referee after a game. So there's some flexibility on the lower level.
So now we're on the second floor.
Yeah. So adjacent to those changing rooms is sort of the large gymnasium. So right now we're showing a 9,000 square foot gymnasium, which is a little bit bigger than your current gym, which doesn't quite have all the proper clearances that you would want, or enough seating.
What's the size of the gym at Runlet right now?
It is 7,800 square feet. So this is 9,000, so it's about 1,200 square feet larger. This is one of the other pieces that we have identified as a potential value engineering option. So we can price a smaller gym. We had also at one point looked at a slightly larger gym, but we can price that too. But
What is the average size of a middle school gym? What's the practice?
8 to 9.
Yep,
Okay.
this is it.
Okay. 12,000 is more of
High school.
Yep.
high school?
Yep.
Correct.
Where would I see a 6,000 in an elementary school maybe?
Yes.
And this space here is the all PE that was below, so that's going to be a 2-story space so that the cheerleaders can use it. You'll have potential basketball hoops in there, so that'll function as another PE station for the school. Okay.
And you can also see the sort of balcony for the auditorium below. We have explored a couple of different auditorium types, and that's something we will be pricing some options for the auditorium.
We'll also look at like a higher, stadium seating like you see in the movie theaters, and see if there's a cost differential between the balcony layout versus the stadium seating.
The balcony configuration is a little more efficient in terms of footprint. So it's a little bit of a smaller footprint than a stadium seating.
What's
To
the seating in the gym? In terms of bleacher space?
Bleachers, retractable bleachers,
Okay.
yes. Yep. And there are retractable bleachers shown in that small,
Downstairs.
in the alt PE space too, because we understand they do wrestling meets in there. They have a couple couple of rows of bleachers. So then to the north of the auditorium, we have the media center, which also is going to look out onto that entry plaza and also be very visible from the main street. So when you're looking back to the east in the main street, you see the media center, and part of the media center currently there is a kind of interactive media space that is off of the main media center. And then to the north of the media center, we have a small media TV space, this is a recording studio space. It's sort of a green screen space that students use to record or do podcasts, record podcasts. And so that is essentially the media center. Right now we are showing kind of a small outdoor classroom space off the media center. We know currently the existing media center has a courtyard off of it that students like to be able to access and sit out in the courtyard on a sunny day. The team pods are the same on all 3 floors, but what does change a little bit are some of the support spaces kind of in between. Up above the nurses' suite on the east end of the building, we have what we're calling sort of a wellness area. And this is all of the counselors. So there are 3 grade level counselors in this space, and they have access to an adjacent conference room. We've also located the social worker and the school psychologist. So they're all sort of clustered together in this sort of wellness area. And it's in the middle of the building to, support all kids throughout the building. Some of the world language classrooms are on this floor. We've got 2 world language classrooms and a health classroom on this floor, and another flexible instructional space. And again, since these classrooms are all about the same size and shape, you can change it up year to year. And then at the end of the main street, sort of above that woodshop space, we have the other career pathway space, which is a robotics and a maker space.
Was thought given to, all of the counselors are together as separating them out by sort of grade or?
We've had a lot of conversations about that. Originally, we were gonna embed a counselor in each grade level area. The counselors felt strongly that they wanted to be together, and the reason they thought they would function better collectively is that they cover for one another. If one of the counselors is busy with another student or away from their office and somebody comes looking for that counselor, another counselor can cover. So they thought sort of being together would be the most effective way that they could serve the students.
So I'll just add to that, your life example today, a child shows up, they're really upset, they have a couple friends with them, something's happened in their life or whatnot, and they show up to a counseling area. If the 8th grade counselor is already tied up with some other 8th graders, and it's an 8th grade child, for example, then one of the other counselors jumps in right away and says, hey, how can I help you? Immediate need right now. So that was the thinking in regards to that.
And we located it on the middle floor of the building, so it's, sort of equally accessible for all students.
And there are these little small group rooms in each of the pods too, so the idea is that those will be flexible as well. People can pop in, if, Mr. Rashad wants to come in and meet with a student, he can pop in there and use that small group room. Can be an office, can be a conference room, so these spaces hopefully are very flexible.
Third floor, the pod configuration is the same. We've got 3 world classrooms kind of in the central zone on this level, along with multiple language learner space. And the top floor also has the 3 art classrooms to the north over the media center.
And that's it.
Can you zoom in on those a little for us?
Sure. So they're all grouped together because they share materials.
Mm-hmm. And kilns. So there are 2 kilns that they have right now.
Right now we're showing access to an outdoor classroom.
Mm-hmm. So the current idea is that regardless of grade, people will go to the 3rd floor for art. And third floor for world languages.
Some
There's
of the
one on the second floor?
two of them are on the second floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you show us the close up of the pods on the third floor?
Maybe. Maybe not. Zoom out and zoom back in. We'll zoom into this one. The idea is really to stack the spaces, so if you understand how it works on one floor, you can understand where you are on the second floor as well.
Right, like the Title I tutoring is in the same place on the first and third floor.
And the teacher planning.
Teacher planning's always in the same place.
A quick question, do I recollect the square footage that's recommended per classroom? Is it 900?
It is 900, and yes, you'll see, these are a little bit under right now. That's just because we just added in these locker bays, so we just need to shift our walls a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we know the state minimum is 900 square feet for a classroom, 1,200 for a science lab.
And you can go for a variance for that, potentially, if you wanted to reduce the size of the classrooms a little bit, because you are providing these team areas outside of the classroom. And so, you know, you could make the case to the state that they are using that center space as well. And so if we needed to tighten up the building a little bit more, that could be a potential way to do it. May not be popular, but that might be something that we put on the value engineering list up for discussion.
Penny wise and pound foolish, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, because again, I would just, as the principal, I would say
You're
that's a
trying to build
minimum
40-year
standard.
building here, and,
Yeah.
You know, pulling up a little short here just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're spending this kind of money.
Right.
I have a few more questions.
frugal, but-
I appreciate your patience with all my questions. I was invited to this committee after the first meeting, so I'm still playing catch-up. Thank you for your patience. So, Jay, if you could tell us, currently, there is a separate room in the current middle school where children who have the label of significant behavioral health issues sort of go and spend their day. When you look at this plan, where are those students located now?
That's a great question. So we talked a lot about language because we had the original designs. We had talked about things like an autism program and things like that, and that's why we really had a lot of conversation around talking about just flexible use spaces, because kids' programs change over time, and we just wanted to make sure that we had the appropriate spaces, like for example, like an 1,100 square foot room for some of the programs we currently, but we didn't want to necessarily put labels on them.
Yes.
And I don't know if I shared this before, but I was a special education teacher at one point in my career. I still have my certification, but over my career, I've seen a lot of changes in terms of language, in terms of how we label those rooms.
I understand, but
Yep.
so
So like, for example.
regardless of the label,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Currently, there is an existing space. In this scheme, once again, I'm just going to ask you directly.
Yep.
Where do the children who you currently keep separate because of the label of behavioral health issues, where are they in this building currently as it's ideally proposed?
It would be in one of those flexible learning spaces that we have.
So,
And I'm gonna push back a little bit,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't say they're separated. That's an area that they go to when they're not in class. So they have more of a need because of their academic and social needs, that they might need to go to that space maybe a few periods out of the day, but we have a full inclusion model when possible. Okay, I'm go ahead.
So it looks like the rooms that had previously, in the previous scheme, that had been labeled special education, autism, life
Yep.
skills, that we've simply just eliminated those labels and replaced them with different, softer sounding language. That's how it looks.
Correct.
So we don't have spatially any differences there. We've just,
No, I think
No,
there
no,
are
we
some
actually moved
significant
them.
changes,
We had
right.
them separated. they became like a wing on the first
Yeah.
floor, and it looked like it was really separated. And so we spent some time on that. We said, no, we want them to feel included, so we move those spaces. Like if you look on the first floor, you'll see some good size areas that would allow kids for, again, we didn't want to say, well, that's only for autistic kids. That isn't what, because they don't need that program all day and be in one place. So, but we moved them out and incorporated them into the scheme of the pods.
Inside the building, I would say,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So I'm not sure what, Lisa, what you mean. Do you see what I'm?
Sure,
like on
I
the
think
first-
what I'm concerned about is that there's a lot of dedicated square footage to flexible spaces. And I'm wondering even if it was a wing before, and it was in the original scheme, there's a certain amount of square footage that was associated with that, with the previous model. Is the same square footage still embedded here?
Yes.
So, okay.
Great question, Lisa. So I think we do, and I think the square footage would be a little bit higher because some of those special education spaces right now are inadequate in terms of state standards for minimum size classrooms.
Sure, I just,
So-
I just, in an ideal world, minimum amounts of time our students with IEPs outside of general education settings, that they spend most of their day
More time, yep.
alongside in math rooms, English rooms, science rooms, social studies rooms. And if you have that space built for special education, then students will end up in those rooms. I wonder if it might not make sense to have still state standard rooms, but just a smaller footprint of those spaces, so that the model is really a model of inclusion and belonging in general education for all learners. And because if that's the philosophy of the school, then you don't need as much square footage for separate spaces for students with IEPs. So, and I'll stop there for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would just say that when we look at our current programming, it's hard to predict what we'll need, 20, 30 years down the road. But I would say our square footage in terms of our student service programs definitely would be an increase of what we currently have because, again, when we took that tour, some of those spaces are definitely inadequate sizes, and we've also put students in spaces that might not routinely be in, like, for example, a former family consumer science space, right? We have one of those programs in there. That room currently was designed for family consumer science, so you have like stoves and other cabinets that we wouldn't necessarily be in a space like that. So the square footage definitely would be higher because you wouldn't have some of those things. But I think overall, when you look at our special education programs, just in general, right, with a variety of different programs, I think the square footage would be about the same and definitely a little bit more. I think that's something we could probably look at, right?
Molly, can I ask
Am
you
I on the right track with that or not?
Well,
No?
Are these rooms a little bit smaller than what we had, or are they the exact same size as what were part of that, I'll call the wing?
Yeah.
Just for our purposes.
They are about the same size,
Yeah, okay.
but they're just a tiny bit, the two on the ground floor are a tiny bit bigger than a traditional classroom.
Yeah.
And that's to allow, we had talked about integrating a toilet room into one or two of
So I
those
think Lisa's
possibly.
point is that you build those rooms, you have these large rooms, and then they become rooms that, okay, well, we'll put all, the youngsters in that room because it's the right size, and I get that. You have to have the right, what's the right word I want to use? The right attitude about how you handle youngsters' needs, right? So I get what you're saying, I know where you're
Right.
headed. and
So you know where I'm headed. So
But
if we're going to cultivate a culture of belonging for all students to learn alongside one another in general education classroom settings, the more square footage we have dedicated in the building creates more mental opportunities to put students with particular labels clumped together. And my suggestion is, can we eliminate a couple of those rooms? And because that opens up the headspace for culture change, where a culture of belonging for all students learning together and getting the menu of supports and services rather than having that happen in a location, right? IDEA is about a menu of supports and services. And time out of gen ed is the last consideration. This seems to be first considering them in separate spaces.
I also see the spaces, so the word flexible is very important. I've been in this district 25 years, and when I first started here, each grade level actually had 4 clusters. There were not 3. And so we had that many students, but we couldn't fit every student in Remlet. So each quarter, an 8th grade team had to spend a quarter at the high school because there wasn't enough room in the building originally. So by calling that flexible, that enables it to be used for should the population increase. Or let's say there's more students who want to take a world language and they need another world language classroom. It could also be used for that. So I understand what you're saying as well, in that you want to have all students included as much as possible in the classroom. But I also have a number of students that do need a place for respite. You know, I have a number of students that do not stay in my classroom the entire time. They become dysregulated and need a place to go. And so I think calling them flexible actually enables them to be just that. You know, we could use them for anything. It doesn't just have to be students who are receiving special education services.
I was going to make a comment on that. One of the things that I think is important is having flexible spaces close and integrated in the pods for, you know, kids who are like you're describing, who for whatever reason they do need that respite, that break, that quiet place to be able to focus and do that work. I think one of the things that concerned me with the initial design was the image of those kids having to go to a separate end of the building to have that opportunity, where if there are, you know, that common area outside of the classroom or those small spaces, that if someone does need that, you know, ability to focus in quiet space right there, being as close as possible to their general education classrooms is very important.
Sure, and we're all in agreement. There are some students who occasionally need respite, and we want those students to have proximity to their learning environment. I will just gently offer that students who need respite are not they don't need that much special education or that much flexible educational square footage. That's all.
And I would agree with that, but I see that flexible space right there as to, I see the science area. Where do they put a pond? Where do they put projects? You know, the middle school has some really cool science projects, and I'm for you know, full disclosure, my undergraduate is in chemistry and science, so I kind of look at that. But I look at that science classroom, and the first thing I say is, man, that's pretty tight and pretty small. You know, kids get into projects that take up a fair amount of space, so I would challenge that flexible space up there in the corner and all could be used for a variety of, you know, projects. And I know there's a makerspace, but this is totally different.
Makerspaces.
I would just say that we're showing too many tables. I think in the science lab they got copied over because what should happen is these should be movable, and you can either be in a kind of lecture setup, or you can then move your tables over and you can be in a lab setup. So it'll look a lot less crowded when there's only one set of furniture in here.
You've got 2 sets in there.
Yeah, yes, we've got 2 classes right now in
Yeah.
there.
It looked crowded.
A quick question, what's your total square footage gross right now?
We're just recalculating that our target's about 205, 205,000 gross square feet. We're a tiny bit over right now, but we have ideas how we're gonna trim it down. So kind of, we add things in, it grows a little bit, and then we shrink it back down. So our target is 205.
Okay. So that would lend itself to a fairly modest number of custodians for the maintenance. I'm not seeing a lot of custodial space. I see 80 square feet on each floor and then
Yep,
a
and then
work
there's a
room.
large wing on the ground floor, which we
Okay.
can show you.
So those established pretty much accepted numbers for what's adequate?
Yep,
Okay.
and we have met with the custodial staff at Runlet.
Okay, great.
Yep.
That was my next question. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep. And these plans, you know, they're still at a very schematic level, still a diagram. So as we go into the next phase, you'll start to see, you know, more info on the mechanical spaces and chase spaces that we need. But our goal is to stay within that 205,000 square feet.
Yeah, that little 80 square foot closet you see, that's just like a satellite closet on each floor, you know, where they can have a, you know, mop sink and store a small amount of supplies. But there's this whole kind of wing on the north is
Holly,
custodial.
we have about 15 minutes left.
Yep.
Could you go to the auditorium, because that's been a big thing.
Yep.
I think we'll be revisiting the rooms again, Lisa. We,
Mhm.
you know, every time we meet, and we meet during the week to take the feedback, and you can see we've made a lot of adjustments.
Yeah,
right?
it's looking
It's
like it's
looking
going in the
really
right
good,
direction.
right?
And Lisa,
Yeah.
I just want to add, I'd be happy to sit down and meet with you just to get a better
Yes.
understanding. I mean, you all know I've offered that. Some of you had taken me up on that to visit the school. And
Yes.
I want to understand more kind of, you know, your questions and I want you to feel like, you know, you've been heard, and I'd like to learn more.
Great, and you must have been reading my mind, because about 2 minutes ago I said, "Oh, I've gotta make arrangements to go
That's
see
right.
Jay."
Nope, I'm happy to do it because I want to make sure I understand.
You know, in the district as a whole, when I look at the data about the students, we keep a lot of students in our district. We do not send a lot of students out. Our numbers are very small as compared to other districts. So I just wanna make sure that we have enough places for everybody, not just, you know, I mean, I'm talking, it could be gifted and talented kids, it doesn't matter, but making sure we have enough spaces, because we really pride ourselves, and Jay and his team pride themselves in making sure that we meet the needs of all kids, and we keep them home.
Yeah, one year we might have a couple, you know, over a span of 3 or 4 years, we might have some students who have some profound needs that we need flexible space for, and we might go for a few years where we don't have those needs. So again, that's why it's just flexible space.
Okay. So can we talk a little about?
So this kind of goes to the cost estimate and what we see as our goal. So right now, we're showing in the plans the 900 seat, and that's ideal for the school. We can talk about why. But we're also going to price a smaller version of that at 450 seats. We've also talked about a medium version at 600 seats. And at this point, it's going to be like a cost per square foot calculation. With the auditorium space, a lot of the cost comes in the equipment that goes into that space. So it's not just the, you know, the space and the chairs and so forth. It's the rigging, it's the lighting, it's, you know, all of that. And so our consultant that works with us on theater space is going to meet with the music folks and also the folks that do the musical, the drama people, and understand their needs, and then write his narrative in a way so that we can scale it up or down. So we'll be able to see, you know, what the cost is if it's got everything, all the bells and whistles. What the cost is if we can provide, you know, a couple line sets so that you can do, you know, a good play in there, and a good sound system. You know, this district seems to be focused a lot on the music end of things. Band and chorus is really big, and so we can look at this as first, you know, a music space, and then second as a, you know, space for drama, and then a multi-purpose space, right? So this is going to get used throughout the day, you know, and you can talk about that, Jay, all the different ways you imagine this being used.
Yeah, I don't know if I shared with this group, like I had just a general list of how I would see how we would use an auditorium, but it would be a classroom space during the day. If I haven't provided that to this group, I'm happy to pass that along at some point. But again, it's a space we would use during the day, like our music program, the possibility of like music lessons in that space and still using the music classrooms as well. Guest speakers, and when I say that, like, video conferencing type stuff. And to be very direct, when I see an auditorium space, I look at this is going to be a K-12 resource for all students. So I would envision like any of our music programs would use this middle school auditorium for concerts, meetings. It's a resource for the entire school district, K through 12.
Professional development.
Professional development, anything and everything. And we lack that space right now, I believe, in our school district K-12. And, that's why we're over at the Capitol Center for our concerts, which, it's a wonderful space, but there's a lot of logistical challenges with that. And we're also charging families to go to the Capitol Center to see a public school concert, $5. And I wonder, with some of our families, keep in mind 40% of my students are on free or reduced lunch. I wonder the impact that has on some of our families about wanting to go see their children at a concert. So I was at all of them, great experience, but I think it would benefit our school community to have that resource for K through 12 in our district. I don't think anyone can convince me otherwise. I'm sorry, but
It's fine.
I feel very strongly about this.
Really? Have you
Yes.
done any sections through this as to how you're gonna build it yet?
We've started some
yeah.
preliminary sections, but, until we know the size of the auditorium that we're talking about, it's hard to really dive into the details. But yes, we have enough floor to floor to make this work, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And we're also gonna price a different option of the stadium seating, like I was saying. So we'll see.
There's a couple of ways to build that too. I've built 2 seating, movie theaters here in town, or
Yep.
not in this town, but in the state of New Hampshire. And one of them was actually the first one, in Londonderry. But, so there's a couple of ways to build it that are more economical than others.
Mr. Cotton couldn't be here tonight, but he did ask a couple of questions that I'm just going to put out there. One is, costing these out, considering building aid only covers so much, so when you do your costs, we'd like to see that. Another would be, he wanted to know whether it's feasible at all to combine the gym and auditorium spaces. That is what is currently done, I think, at the middle school, is there's a combination of a performance space with what is used as an auxiliary gym or something like that. He wanted to know whether you consider that. The other thing he brought up, and it's kind of a little out of the box thinking, is there a way that certain functions in not only this school but the 2 elementary schools that are nearby could be combined in order to save costs? For instance, having a cafeteria kitchen that can prepare food for all 3 schools and just warming stations at the other 2, which may come into space if we need that in the elementary schools, or combined and interactive multimedia spaces, which are very interesting ideas. So I just throw them out there for you to think about and consider. So.
And we have had some discussion about the, combining the auditorium and the gym. It will be more difficult in that space to get good acoustics, right? For
You will hear
performance
from
space.
2 very different, I'm sure you'll hear both sides of that.
Yes.
Passionately expressed, but I did want to throw it out there because Mr. Cotton wanted to consider it as an option.
And I don't think we should throw it away because, I am not sure how the costs are going to come in. I'm hopeful that they're going to be significantly lower than when we estimated it during the peak of COVID. But, it may have to be on the table. So we have done that kind of a setup in elementary schools typically. The elementary schools actually have that. So, we can give a diagram and a narrative to the estimators and get a cost. And that would completely take out the auditorium. And it would add a stage onto your gym space or your multipurpose room, which is the way you have it right now.
Okay.
I know that won't make the school very happy. And that would have to be, desperate
Oh, I'm-
measures to get to that point.
But it's one thing we should consider just to be thorough.
Sure.
Tina, do you have anything else you absolutely want to say? Because before we run out of time, I don't want to keep us kind of
I do have a quick
on hand. I
question.
do want to give public a chance to make some comments, so.
Quick question, has the school district or staff, the school board, anybody, given a list to the architects of what would be the easiest places to do cost savings versus the harder places based on the visioning sessions, so that, do you all have a list of that? And can we, if you do, can we know it?
We don't have a specific list. What we,
Kinda early for that.
what we've heard is all of the needs, and that's what we're showing you here. But if you look at the screen, this is a good segue into this.
Okay.
This is what we'll develop for you.
Can you make that a little
Yep.
bigger?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Along with the cost estimate. So this is for another school. This is for our Dover High School and Career Tech Center at Schematic Design. We'll put together, like I told you, a menu. So in this, we're, targeting reductions. It had a courtyard, so we want to target a $400,000 reduction with that. Landscape reductions, theater package target. And we will have the estimators fill this out and give us costs for each of these. Oops. And the goal would be, sorry, let me go back. The goal would be to have more things on that list than what you need to get to your budget, so that you can actually choose which ones are going to make the most sense. And I'll just zoom in a little bit further down here. In this case, we were saying, we can only afford a $500,000 track. This is a high school, keep in mind. So the turf field was worth $500,000. Should that go? Should that stay? We're also doing an analysis of what it costs to maintain your grass fields, because that will play into this. So should you build a turf field for X? Should you build grass fields that can only get used so many times and cost this much to maintain? So we'll look at all of those pieces. So we'll create this list. Reduce the height of the town square. They had a main street similar to this, and the first floor was taller than the rest of the floors. So can we take out height in the building? Can we use joists at the classrooms instead of beams? Can we reduce, the HVAC package, change floorings, reduce student lockers, things like that? We're going to come up with everything under the sun.
Yeah, but I just want to be, like, when we think about Dover High School, right? I visited Dover High over February break. I wanted to see the site myself. So they didn't do the field at the time, but now they're going to be building a field. So if you follow the news on the Seacoast, one of the things I think about is, okay, now they're going to build the field, but if they had built it then, a few years ago when they did this project, how much money would they have saved? Because now they're going to be doing it a few years later, So if it was, say, $500,000 then, right? Yep, they saved that $500,000. But if they're paying, and they are going to build a field turf there now, and it's $1.5 million 4 years later, that's kind of the thinking I hope we dialogue around, because, yeah, we might save money now, but if we need this down the road, what's going to be the cost difference? So
We've started to look at some of
Yeah.
those things. We look at fields, what do we really need?
I
And
was-
we've already begun to talk about that, the green space outside. Do we need that? Can we put that on later on? Not to follow up on Jay's point, but we've been doing that internally, so we can prepare ourselves for that value engineering that's gonna happen.
Thank you.
But
And
we
we'll,
haven't put that list together yet.
yeah, we're a little early, but we will want to look at
Yeah.
that.
We will.
I do want to give the public a chance to comment. Mr. Richard, if you don't mind sliding,
absolutely.
moving to the other chair and just leaving your microphone. Does anybody want to come up and make any public comment? I want to give you, please just state your name.
Sure, Dan Habib, Concord resident, 2 kids who've gone through the school here. I just want to acknowledge, I think some really great progress has been made since our last, discussion around this, and we all appreciate, those of us who are here and others in the community, the really open listening that we have felt from everyone, and the shared vision, but also the respect for life experience that we bring, to the table. So I think it's a huge change to see that wing, as we called it, kind of integrated more into the school. I guess the only things I would say is, echoing some of what Lisa said, those rooms, I do worry about those rooms being a little oversized, because if you build it, they will come, and I just don't know that we need that much space for flexible areas when you have so many other needs in the building. So I think it just might, by reducing the size, there might be a little bit of a distance, of an incentive not to use those spaces as, you know, congregating places for kids with particular support needs. I still would love to see some type of, and I know this is more about landscaping, but some type of egress from the second floor out, so that there's like a natural ramping down to the first floor, so that in the warmer months, kids could, you know, avoid using the elevator if they wanted to. It creates like an outdoor ramp. And for emergency egress, as we've discussed, it's a nightmare for a kid in a wheelchair to get down from the second or third floor. I would love parachutes. I don't know. What do you want to do? Yeah. No, I mean, certainly, if we could do it, I'd love to see a better solution. I just don't know that there's an easy one. Yeah. That would be kind of cool, actually. So, and then, and the elevators, you mentioned these briefly, but we talked last time about sizing them in a way that can have a kid and an aide and a teacher and multiple other kids there together, just the social structure. I still would love to see at least a concept for a ramp. I think we would just love to see what that looks like. And
Zip line, maybe.
We should have brought
What's
it.
that?
We had like 4 different
Zip line would be
options.
great.
We
Zip
just
line would be great.
didn't bring it.
We'll bring the drawings next time.
Yeah. Anything else you guys?
And if I can add in,
Yeah.
because if we're just going to pretend for a second it's a district where a robotics room didn't matter at all, and we didn't want robotics, that would then free up some money if the district wanted the ramp, right? So that's where
all
that
choices.
question, it's all about choices, so.
And one other thing I would say is just like when I look at all this, I know this is, I'm going to be a little bit further down the line, but whenever I see seating and bleachers, always think about how can students with mobility issues sit next to their peers? Because we ran into that in high school where Samuel, my son, could never sit with his friends because there was just no space. So I think always just imagining in every situation, how can kids with and without disabilities be near each other, sitting with each other, traveling together, which I think you're trying to do, but it's just, we can maybe have an eye for detail on some of the stuff that not everybody has. So.
Thank you, Mr. Habib. I think that's great points. We have an opportunity at this stage to make some changes that don't cost as much but have big impact. So I'd like as many ideas on the table as we can. So great. Anybody else want to come down and say anything? Mr. Habib did all your speaking for you. Yeah, he does that. I just want to reiterate the fact that we want as much input from different groups of people as we can get, because, you know, we're doing, you know, we want to make an amazing, great school that doesn't cost a lot of money, and we need everybody's input on that to be able to achieve that goal. So, thank you. We are almost at time. Does anybody want to, HMFH, do you have anything else you want to put in there?
No. All
Superintendent?
great suggestions, and
No, I'm good.
we're
This was
excited.
great again.
All right.
Excellent.
Any other
Excellent.
building committee member have anything they want to, that we didn't touch on or that you'd like to have out there? Will be a lot more opportunity, I'm sure, to discuss this. I very much appreciate your patience with me stepping in here at the last minute, and that I'm not as prepared as I would normally like to be, but I think we had a lot done, and we are meeting again in May.
Right, but I just.
But we have
want to caution
subcommittees.
everyone, we are getting, you know, closer and closer to that time when I've got to give some numbers and drawings to the architect so we can get a cost. And we are starting to figure that timeline out. So we'll get you out a note. I have to meet with Pam and look at our dates at the school board and back it up, so.
Well, that was my feeling, and I believe.
We might have more than one in a month.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to bring that up, I'm bringing it up as it is, and I believe Mr. Brewster brought it up the last time that, you know, we have a lot to do,
We have a lot to
and we need to maybe schedule some more to do it.
I will make sure you get out another note with the timeline, but I do need to talk.
All of the information here is going to be on the website for the public, correct?
That's correct.
It already is.
Very good, Ms. Wolf, thank you. So, all right, and so, thank you, everyone. With that, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
The sustainability, having the